Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to webinar number 3 here, put on by Pistol Australia and all the states and territories. We're talking today all things metallic silhouette. I'm your host, Mike Westdorp, and we're joined with David Dewsbury, John Harding and Scott Dawson. So we'll just bring the boys up and introduce them to you. But just before we kick off, ladies and gentlemen, if you're on the panel or a participant watching, down on the bottom of the center of the screen that you can see, there's a Q&A button. So if you want to ask any questions throughout the live stream here, just click on the Q&A button and type your question in. And if you're watching from overseas, please put your country in from wherever you're watching or wherever you're watching around Australia. Let us know where you're watching. Type the questions in. We'll get to those as we go throughout the afternoon, talking all things metallic silhouette. So we'll kick off firstly by introducing our panel members. Firstly, let's introduce John Harding. He started firing pistols back in 1968. John at Margie High School, a bit of a school sports program. Joined the Canamble Pistol Club in 1979. And then John's career took him in 1981 to Narrabri, where he witnessed the first metallic silhouette shoot, and Narrabri hosted the state championships. And in his words, he was hooked. In 1985, he was selected in the New South Wales state team. And in 2001, he met his wife, Judy, and married her, moved to Queensland. He's been in that Queensland state team since 2002. And one of his career highlights back in 2013, he was selected in the Australian team to the World Cup in Sweden, and John won the individual gold in production category. Welcome along, John.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having you along. David Dewsbury, who anybody who shoots metallic silhouette knows David. He started pistol shooting in 81. 87, he represented the first metallic silhouette team that went to New Zealand. In 1992, David went off to Paris to set up IMSU, which is the International Metallic Silhouette Shooters Union. And he's the current vice president, supporting our own Australian, Robert Boucher, who's the president. 1996, David won a world championship in South Africa, shot a world record of 35 out of 40 to become the world champion. I think that medal sitting up behind you there, David, is your world championship medal?
That's correct, Mike, yep.
Fantastic. You're also a referee and a coach in metallic silhouette. You've been instrumental in developing the first Australian-made unlimited silhouette pistol named the MAB silhouette pistol. We're going to see those a little bit later in the show. And you're currently a vice president for Pistol Australia, having served on committees at New South Wales Amateur Pistol Association also. So welcome along, David.
Thanks, Mike, and it's great to be here.
Great to be here. Scott Dawson, our third panelist here. 1988, he started shooting in his hometown in Armidale and shot 10-metre air pistol and a lot of the ISSF matches. He started shooting metallic silhouette in 1999 down in Canberra with his uncle, Uncle Greg. He's currently a member of the Toogoolawah Pistol Club up there in Queensland. He's represented both New South Wales and Queensland, has been selected in the Australian team on multiple occasions. He's been to the 2011 World Cup in Finland, the 2012 World Champs in South Africa. Probably the highlight of his career, 2014 World Champs in the Czech Republic, winning Australia's first big bore gold medal in the team's aggregate. And at the same championships, Scott got bronzes in the big bore open aggregate, the big bore unlimited, and the big bore production. And currently he's the small bore open aggregate and field pistol Australian champion. Welcome, Scott Dawson.
G'day everyone, thanks for having me.
Cool. Great, we can sit here and have a chat. Obviously people can't go to the range at the moment. We all know the reasons why. So as a traditional Saturday afternoon time that people would head to the range, we're putting on these webinars and we're talking all things metallic silhouette today. So firstly, David, can you tell us the difference between big bore and small bore? What is the difference between the two matches that you shoot?
The difference, Mike, and to the people that are listening, is that the small bore shot over 100 metres, obviously with reduced size targets. But mainly the main difference is that it comes from the 22 long rifle caliber, which is basically a factory produced round. The big bore match is shot over 200 metres centre fire cartridges, and also has the ability to be able to reload your own ammunition, which then makes it more personal to the competitor. The competitor has the ability to be able to produce a round that is suited to his own firearm, and that's the difference. But basically, centre fire, big bore, is over 200 metres, small bore over 100 metres.
It's a small bore you shoot banks of targets at 25, 50, 75 and 100, and big bore it's at 50, 100, 150 and 200, which seems incredible for a handgun to shoot a target accurately at 200 metres.
Yeah, and that's correct, Mike. I mean, the people that you talk to in conversation really have, they don't believe you that you can shoot a pistol over those distances and get the accuracy that we're actually getting out of them.
Probably a friend of yours, Maritz Isaacson, joining us from Sweden, one of the members of Metallic Silhouette globally.
Yeah, it's good to have him on board, on side.
Yeah, welcome along. So, John, we're going to go to you. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint presentation, and we've got. Let me just share that one up for you. Just again, questions, people. If you go to the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, you can type in your questions as we go along. So we'll get to those. But John, looking up on the screen there, you've given us some great photos there of the different size targets shot across the different matches, compared there to a can of Coke. So take us through the different pictures you've got up there on the screen.
Yeah, well, in each picture, there are 5 different size targets. Starting on the left, that's the full size big bore target. The chickens are shot at 50 metres, the pigs at 100 metres, the turkeys at 150, and the rams are at 200. The next one along is the half scale target. Some people call them half the size, but that's not actually correct. It's half the scale. They're shot for big bore unlimited, chickens at 50, pigs at 100, turkeys at 150, and rams at 200, same as the full size match. They're also the targets we use for the field pistol match. The chickens are then at 25, pigs at 50, turkeys at 75, and rams at 100. The next one down is the 3/8 scale, which is the normal rimfire target that we use for production, revolver, and standing matches. They're shot, once again, same distances at the field as the field pistol. Chickens at 25, pigs at 100, at 50, turkeys at 75, and rams at 100. The next one, middle one along, the second last one, is the 5th scale, and they're the unlimited rimfire targets. We shoot those chickens at 50, at 25, pigs at 50, turkeys at 75, and rams at 100. And the last one, the real tiny one, is the air pistol target. Now, the chickens are shot, I think, at 10 metres, the pigs at 12, the turkeys, I think it's 15, and the rams at 18 metres. So you can see the relevant difference in size. I put the Coke cans there just for a point of reference to give you some idea on how big or small the targets are relative to each other, and it's a scale reference for anyone who doesn't know.
Yeah, so you shoot banks of 5, and you shoot 5 chickens and then another 5 chickens, and you go. So it's over 40 shots the entire match. So 10 shots at each target size. Now that second chicken along there, the half scale one, that's the unlimited, as you said, and that goes out to 200 metres in a shoot off. If you've got a couple of competitors are tied on the same score and you've got to have a shoot off, you stick the chickens out at 200 metres. That is tiny once it goes out that far. It
is, but sometimes it's usually a mixture of the targets, usually a chicken and a couple of pigs and a couple of turkeys, probably at 200 metres. But if we get to the unlimited category, that's for normal production revolver. The unlimited category, we can have all chickens at 5 chickens at 200 metres. So you can see the relative size in relation to the Coke can, and that's pretty fair accuracy for a pistol at 200 metres. A lot of rifle shooters can't do that with a telescopic sight and a sandbag rest. So.
Well, I've just gone over to our next slide here. That's a 50 metre ISSF target for a 50 metre pistol, and you've overlaid some of the targets, some of the metallic silhouette on top of that target there, just to get an understanding. So people are shooting that target at 50 metres and you're shooting some of those much further away on the metallic silhouettes.
That's right. The bigger ones are the 5th scale, which we shoot for unlimited match, the limited rimfire match out to 100 metres. And the smaller ones are the air pistol targets that shot from 10 to 18 metres. So if you put the chicken on the centre of the target, he's basically about X-ring size.
Yeah,
anyone wants to try it, put an air pistol or put a precision target up, and see if you can keep all your shots in the X-ring. You're allowed to use 2 hands.
A lot of people can't get that all X-rings at 50 metres on the pistol. It's one of the high precision matches in ISSF, and obviously to come across and shoot in metallic silhouette, it is extreme accuracy. The first time I witnessed it last year up in Narrabri, I was just amazed and gobsmacked that people are knocking those half-scale targets down at 200 metres. I just couldn't believe it was happening.
Yeah, it definitely is a precision match, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And there's also obviously all sorts of different shooting positions. We shoot standing, and in the standing match you must shoot standing, but then it's freestyle after that, isn't it? You can shoot sitting, kneeling, in prone, or Creedmoor, which is one of the positions we'll talk about as well. So David, there's many different positions people would choose to shoot in.
Yeah, I go back to when I first started, Mike, back in the early 80s. We really didn't have a lot of knowledge about what was best to do and what positions, but basically I started shooting in the prone position. Scores weren't really that high, but I started shooting in the prone position, read a few magazines, spoke to a few people overseas, and come up with this position called the Creedmoor, which is laying on your back with the pistol down by your side. And that, to me, is the most accurate way to shoot. Now, you can, in the freestyle position, there's no real definite position, but generally people will take the Creedmoor position over anything else. So, it's a personal thing. And then you've got the standing position, which obviously someone like Scotty, who you watch Scotty shoot standing, and over the years has produced some pretty good scores. But as years have gone by, our standing technique and pistols that we use have changed dramatically.
Yeah. Scotty, you came out of ISSF shooting in your early part of your shooting career, and do you take good techniques and they come across to another discipline?
Absolutely. Shooting ISSF, obviously, especially air pistol, teaches you how to follow through with the shot. It's only 10 metres, but the 10 ring is only it's less than the size of a 5-cent piece.
I think it's about 11 millimetres or 10 millimetres.
Yeah, it's very small. And I started with the club gun, an old Finework Bow 65, like not a CO2 or a gas gun. Greg, he said, if you shoot all 10 shots in the black, you can go on to a better gun. It took me months and months and months to get that. And that taught me how to follow through and get that perfect shot each time. Also had a lot of training or coaching from the current Australian coach for the national team. So going through that as a junior also helped me. And that really, when I went to metallic silhouette, going into standing, that used to be one of my really good matches. These days it's an average match for me at the moment. I try to get most of my points lying down, but having that ISSF background is not necessarily, it's not, I guess you don't have to have it, but it's also very good having that air pistol, and it's good practice for your shot release and follow through.
Okay, guys, we've got a little bit of a video that Fuzzy's put together for us. So we'll take us through the whole video, and then we can talk about the various aspects. And it's going to show standing, it's going to show small bore, big bore, the targets from looking from different distances, and also shows the Creedmoor. And something I really want to talk about is the role of a spotter, because you work in teams, and it's very much shooting's an individual sport, except when you come to metallic silhouette, it's very much a team sport. Wouldn't you agree, David?
Yeah, 100%, Mike. It's definitely a team partnership, and you've got to have it. It's like anyone won't disagree with what I'm about to say, is that you've got to have as much confidence in your spotter as your ability to be able to fire the shot. No doubt about it at all.
Okay, let's have a look at a bit of a rundown. It's about 3.5 minutes here, video going across a lot of metallic silhouettes. So we'll just get that up and get it going. Hello and welcome to day 2 of competition. We're at the 100-metre point on the range. Have a look here. This is the ram. This is how far these guys have got to shoot from the firing line back at the camera. And I'm tiny when we zoom back out. You sort of see there, that's your small bore out to 100 metres. And then we'll see a bit of vision coming up now here of people doing standing matches. That's at the Nationals this year in Canberra, earlier in the year before we were locked down. So interesting hold there, guys, the hand over the top of the barrel there on the metallic side.
Yeah, that's part of the change that's come in the last, 5 to 10 years, Mike. And when we get to talk about that, I think it'll be quite obvious that, the taco hole is what they call it, up close to your face, very accurate.
And there's a shot there of the Creedmoor, and we'll see more of that a little bit later in the video. And John doing a bit of spotting there for Judy. And Scott doing a bit of spotting, and then some of Scott shooting. This apparently is not Scott, but he comes back into the picture again.
The guy currently shooting there, Mike, is an ex-rifle shooter who took up metallic silhouette and found it very, very different to adapt to metallic silhouette laying on the ground in reverse order. He would be laying with the rifle.
Yeah, and here's our spotters. Very important to spot where your shots are going and give you an indication whether you're high, low, left, right, or you're right on centre. These are interesting. These little spotter boards there. Put the mark on just to let the competitor know exactly where they've gone.
Yep, that's important. Very important that the shooter actually knows and sees where the impact on the target is, so he can make an adjustment if required. And here you are, David, in the Creedmoor, showing it left-handed. Yep, which is not real common these days, Mike. So obviously when you've got a left-handed shooter, he has or she has guns specifically designed, the grip designed for obviously shooting off the other side of the body. So did you develop this MAB gun specifically for yourself initially, and then it's become probably the weapon of choice or the gun of choice? Well, it's not the gun of choice anymore. It just sits in the safe in a very safe place. But the point is that when we first started metallic silhouette, there were no Australian guns around, especially unlimited pistols. A company in Brisbane, MAB Engineering, who was a rifle shooter and a rifle manufacturer, took on the, you're looking at a MAB right there in the picture there, and I was instrumental in the development of that firearm, which there is quite a few of them on the range today. There we go, and then we see the 50, 100, 150, 200 out there, and a little bit of skull there. Someone's setting up some chickens, and you look right back to the back of the range. It's a long way back there at 200 metres, a long way back. Long way back when you get to a shoot-off on the Sunday afternoon and the shoot-off target's the size of Coke cans, I can tell you. Yeah, well, that's one of the aspects here, because you don't have finals in the match, but they almost are like finals. If you've got competitors locked at the same score, you have a 5-target shoot-off, and if they're tied again, you go again and again. So you could go through 2, 3, 4 times before you separate those competitors and get your final placings. Yeah, exactly right, Mike. The Sunday afternoon brings the winner out, and everybody lays on the line same time, same conditions, and then the target sizes are massively reduced from the match size that they've shot. So then it's all about mental attitude towards the shoot-offs and how much luck you're going to take with you into the shoot-offs.
And the hard thing about it too, Mike, is that at the end of the weekend, you're suffering from eye fatigue and your body's tired, And now you're confronted with these miniature targets at 200 metres. That makes it all harder, much more harder again.
It does, Scotty. I think you had 1 or 2 shoot-offs for your national championships this year in Canberra in the small ball.
Yeah, I think especially small ball unlimited. That's one of the most difficult. They don't put the little chicken out there. Thank God. It's too small, but they put one ram out there, which is a good thing. It's the bigger one out of all of them. The little pigs. It's just so fatiguing after shooting 6 matches in small ball field pistol, and then going to have to do 3 or 4 shoot-offs at the end of the Sunday afternoon. The eye fatigue is the biggest thing for me, especially after I notice my eye definitely gets fatigued in 5th scale and half scale in the big ball. But I guess it's all practice and trusting your ability and see how you go.
Yeah, well, you've got to obviously train for that. For training, guys, it's just time on the range, or do you do other physical type training for metallic silhouette? John, you've been in sport for a long time. What sort of things have you done over the years to get yourself in line for shooting?
I did a little bit of lightweight sort of stuff with about 1 kilo weight in each hand, and basically coming up from the ready position, standing ready position, into the taco hole type thing, in doing a series of repeats. About, do a 5-shot thing, the same as you would in a match. Just come up, hold the weights for 10 seconds, put them down, and do that. Do that 5 times, and maybe do a set of 10 or 20 or 30 of those sort of things. But I haven't done anything for the other matches apart from normal, just general fitness, I suppose. I do a fair bit of walking for cardio sort of type thing, but that's about it.
And we saw you shooting there, spotting for your wife, Judy. Let's talk about the teams aspect, how important the spotter is to the competitor, and what actually is the role of the spotter?
Well, the spotter's watching through a telescope to see where the shot either hits the target or doesn't hit the target, in which case all she'll see is a cloud of dust. But then they can see where the shot missed, and if it's low, they'll tell you or indicate on the spotter board. You can, if you think it was a good shot, then obviously something went wrong. The sights mightn't be quite right. You can adjust your sights to suit, to come up, raise the rear sight a little bit, to come bring the shot a little bit higher. If the next shot's a good hit, okay, then the first one was obviously the sights were set right for that particular day. Because they will vary day to day more with the light conditions and the wind and that sort of thing. So you've got to make adjustments to that. And that's where the spotter comes in. They'll tell you whether the shot was a good centre hit, left, right, up or down. And if you don't trust your spotter, you're lost before you start. Did they call it right? I thought it was a good shot, but they said it was, 3 inches or 4 inches to the right of centre. And if that's on the chicken, that's a long way to the right. So you need to really trust the spotter and be confident that they're giving you the right information.
And that's very important, as what John has just said, because when you get selected on the Australian team and you are relying on someone that you're not completely accustomed to, the voice that's giving you directions of where the bullet is completely different. So it's a learning curve again, that you've just got to put your faith into the guy looking through the scope that's telling you where your shots are, so you can make the adjustments that will result in the best score you can get on the day.
Yeah, some people come to competition in teams, and I know, Scott, you sometimes come by yourself, so you've got to rely on one of the other pistol shooters, and everybody pitches in and helps. Someone else to spot for you, and do you find there's 1 or 2 people that you particularly like to have spotting for you?
Yeah, absolutely. We try to sort of communicate before we enter who we try to get to spot us with. This year, down in Canberra at the Nationals, Matt and I shot together really well. We do work very well. We have worked well in the past, but he's down in Canberra, so he's a long way. We don't shoot together often, there are a few guys that we work together here and there, but it's just sometimes you just can't help it. You got to adapt.
Yeah. And you guys were all at the Big Bore Championships last year up in Narrabri, and we had some challenging conditions where the wind was sort of coming down the range till about halfway, and then it was almost going across the range. So that whole spotter and sighting and adjusting your sights was super critical because that wind played havoc for probably about half a day, one day there, David?
Yeah, no, and that's a very important part of what we do, Mike. And as I said, you've got to have as much confidence in yourself as a spotter. So when the spotter's calling you shots, you can say, well, I need to go 3-4 clicks left or right, high or low, because when you get out, the further you go out, the error factor changes dramatically, and you've just got to keep your impact to the center of the target as close as you can. So it's very important that you'll be able to read the wind conditions and the light conditions, mirage conditions, and your spotter's got to be able to give that information to you as accurately as he or she can.
Yeah. So I want to welcome Tom Johnson's on from Sweden. Great to have him along. And we've got a question here from Ben. Which range would you consider the hardest and why?
Well, from my experience, and I'll let everyone answer this, but my answer to that would be Inverell is very hard because it's got a lot of white sand. As far as it's a flat range, you go to Queensland where Toogoolawah is elevated, and then if anyone has had the opportunity to shoot in Tasmania and Bruny Island, I think the elevation on the Rams is about 92 metres, so it's very high. So your position of your gun on your leg is incredibly way out of comfort zone, Mike. So the Inverell would be the toughest range, I would say, but they're all got their idiosyncrasies as different ranges.
John, your toughest range?
Yeah, well, I'd agree with David there, simply because of the brightness of the background. It tends to draw your eye out, or it does for me anyway, and I get eye fatigue much quicker in a situation like that. Particularly if it's a bright sunny day. If it's a dull overcast day, it's not so bad. The effect's not quite anywhere near as bad as it is when the sun's out. Dave said about the Toogoolawah, I have the same issues there. The gun has to move further up your leg in the Creedmoor position until you get to the Rams. I'm not sure how high they are. I have measured them at some stage, but I just can't remember at the moment. But that, whether it doesn't affect, from my point of view anyway, the trajectory of your projectile. So I still have the same sight picture. I don't adjust the sights differently for the different ranges, whether they're up or down, because the distance measured to the target is measured in a horizontal form rather than up the slope of the hill. So technically, the effect of gravity is the same over that 200 metres as it would be on a flat range or up the hill, because the up the hill range is measured on the flat, so it should be if it's done correctly.
Yeah, so ranges in Australia, I guess there's no ranges in South Australia, I believe, NT. There's a couple of states that aren't shooting metallic silhouette for Pistol Australia at the moment. They can go and do that. What would you suggest they do, David, if they want to set up metallic silhouette at your range somewhere where you don't currently have it?
Well, if you're in an area that obviously doesn't have a silhouette range, Mike, obviously there's a lot of criteria involved in setting up a 200-metre range and a 100-metre range, where most of our ranges maximum range length is 50 metres. But contacting your state association and then on to Pistol Australia through the correct channels is the best way to find out where the location is, because a lot of people out there listening today and watching won't have access to a silhouette range, say. So the best way is to contact either, I guess, for me, contact me if they're in New South Wales or New South Wales body, and then find out through the correct channels, mate. But that's it in a nutshell, yeah. But to answer your question, we can go back years ago when we shot a national championships in Katherine, and that was on a military base, which is now closed down. But in the past, there's been metallic silhouette ranges in most states that could be shot on.
Yeah. And
Darwin,
Scotty, what's your... Darwin has it. Sorry, you were saying, John?
Yeah, Darwin Pistol Club had a metallic silhouette range the last time we were there a year or two ago, but I'm not sure whether they're still active. We haven't heard from anyone up there, but certainly they did have a range.
Yeah.
So, Scotty, what do you class as the most difficult range to shoot on? And then two-part question here, your most difficult range in Australia, and then how do you cope internationally overseas with spotting? I mean, do you use your team members or do you use a foreign spotter?
Yeah, okay. So my difficult range would actually be my local club. Shooting uphill at Big Bore in Toogoolawah is quite difficult for me. I can't seem to get comfortable a lot of the time, especially with my revolver. I don't really mind Inverell too much. Obviously, the brightness does get to people, and it does create extra fatigue. But yeah, I'd say Toogoolawah, even the small bore there, it's a very glary range. I think the times of year that we do shoot there, in certain parts of the day, the sun really reflects off the sort of light cream background, and it's very hard to distinguish the difference between the rail and the target. As for spotting overseas, we don't shoot all our matches over 3 days in international competitions, generally over up to about 10 days. So we do generally have 4 to 5 people actually competing on the team. And we'll come up with a plan before we go over to minimise the fatigue on each other. We'll get the squatting, whether it be some of our team members actually shoot 10 matches over that 10 days. We'll try to minimise them actually being spotters. That's where our team manager, Judy, John's wife, will step in and do the spotting for us. And that's, you need to really get your eye rested, especially if you're going into those smaller matches where you go the fifth scale in 100 metre and your half scale in 200 metre. If you're doing a sporting match before that, which we do in Australia, we're used to it, but we try to rest our eyes.
Try and help each other out and the teammates out. So question here for David. You mentioned mirage effect. Now, what is it and how does the spotter call it?
Mirage effect. Well, I guess mirage is a very tricky thing to handle. And what it is it's the temperature of the day with the wind that's actually blowing across range, and it tends to when you look over, your sights move the target away from where it actually is. It's the heat shimmer on the target, especially at 200 metres is where you really notice it, and you've got to be able to read the wind conditions and then make sight adjustments to correct the inference of the target actually moving away from where it actually is. Rifle shooters suffer because they shoot over a lot longer distances and they really have difficulties with it. But at 200 metres, it's not such a big deal, but you need to be able to read the wind and the mirage to correct the position of the target.
Okay, let's talk about equipment. I guess one of the most important things that for people to understand with metallic silhouette is it's open sights. There's no scopes. So your eyesight, you guys have all mentioned about eye fatigue, and I notice here we're all wearing glasses. So how does that work with open sights?
Well, I guess I'll start off, and then because we all have, like you said, wearing glasses, and as we get older, it is a much more difficult thing to handle, and I'm actually having difficulty coping with that right now as my age goes on and my eyes get worse. Then I have to use different techniques to be able to stay at the top of where I want to be, but things have changed so much in the years with the ability to be able to, when I first started, they had production guns with narrow sights. You couldn't change the sights. You couldn't widen the sights like you can in ISSF to make it suit whatever you wanted to suit for that particular day. So it's a very hard thing to manage as far as I'm concerned, Mike, and it's something that can be detrimental to the way that a top class shooter can easily be brought back to earth very quickly.
Oh, you're back there, David. I think we all froze up, and I'm not sure whose was the problem then. But yeah, John, and we'll go with John first. Again, your eyesight. I noticed people wear a makeshift. It's almost like a cap, but it's made out of an ice cream container. So is that to try and shield you from light, shield you from reflection, and try and focus your sight?
Well, yeah, it's more of a sunshade, I suppose, to keep the amount of light coming in probably at a little more of a constant thing, rather than if the sun's going in and out behind clouds, you get a bright image, you get a dull image. But if you've got a little bit of a tunnel, I suppose, almost to look through with the extension on your cap, it cuts down the difference between in the light changes and makes it a little bit more consistent for the shooter. I personally don't use one. Mine, and David will remember from my days at Narrabri, I had glasses that looked like the bottoms of Coke bottles. I was very short-sighted. In the last couple of years, I've had cataract surgery done and corrected that, but I still need glasses for up close sort of thing, because the lenses I had put in were for distance vision. But I could see the targets probably a little bit better, but everyone just about uses some sort of shooting lens or shooting glasses, Knoblochs, Champions, same sort of thing as the ISSF people use, with the lens ground to suit your particular requirements. Now, I have mine set up so it basically brings the sights into focus, and I use the iris fitted to the glasses to bring the targets in a little bit better. And some people have it the other way around. It depends on your personal preference, but I think that's probably the average. Most people use it to see the sight, the glasses to see the sights, and the iris to bring the targets into focus.
Yeah, Scotty, do you wear the glasses where you actually cover one eye up while you're shooting? Like you have it, I've seen the ISSF people have it, they have the flap that comes down to cover one eye. So obviously if you're right or left eye dominant, you want to make sure that you're just using the one eye and trying to rest the other eye?
It's not really resting. You just don't want to have any distractions from that eye. Plus, it's also good to cover your eye in our sport, because we are shooting against metal targets, and we do, But so when we do close that, it also takes that distraction off from the other eye and makes us concentrate on the sight. I was just listening to John there. His script comes in to get the sights clear. I'm actually the opposite, so I'm short-sighted. I try to get the target clear, so my point of aim is a lot better. And then I use that iris as well that brings the sights clearer. And also when I do have a blue ribbon ice cream on my cap. And I think once that gets that shade, the iris actually goes a lot blacker, and it really makes a distinction between the actual image and the blackness of the back of the iris. And I think that's really good for me. And I'm only concentrating on that little tunnel, as John was talking about. So it's really good.
I think we've kind of answered the question there. Joe Kapitanoff, our national development coach, wanted us to talk about eye fatigue and special eyewear like an ISSF. I think we've sort of covered that off for Joe there with that, what we've just spoken about in those areas. Before we go on and look at your equipment that you guys have brought in for us, Jason from Port Macquarie, David's got a question. He'd like to participate in metallic silhouette big bore, but he thinks the nearest range is Narrabri, which is a 5-hour drive from him. He's wondering if there's any prospect of big bore ranges opening in New South Wales in the future, or is there one closer to him from Port Macquarie?
To answer his question, he's 100% correct. You've got Narrabri or Mount Lindsay, which, depending on one's slightly further away but easier to get to, straight up the coast road. But it's all about the ability to be able to put that 200 metre range and with the fallout zone, that's where it's critical. You need about 3 for centerfire handguns, probably about 3 Ks behind the range. So you need to have a lot of, or the ability to be able to access land that you can actually use and get a fallout zone behind you. But no, I think he's pretty much on the money there as far as Narrabri and or Mount Lindsay.
Yeah,
sorry, John.
He's got a range. There's a range at Inverell or out at Delungra, which is just west of Inverell.
Yep.
Which is probably a little bit closer to Narrabri. Might be an hour closer. I don't know. I haven't driven that through between the two, but there are 2 or 3 guys that shoot silhouette in Port Macquarie that travel to Narrabri, Delungra, Mount Lindsay. They occasionally come up to Goolawall. So if he gets onto them and has a chat with them, they'll probably clue him up which is the closest one.
Well, what he can do, what Jason can do is maybe email pawebinar@pistol.org.au and give his details, and then one of you guys can get back to him and let him know, maybe put him in contact with the people at Port Macquarie. And I know he'd be more than welcome if you got up to Narrabri, David.
Yeah, no, definitely, mate. That's the way to go. And one more new shooter is one more that we didn't have yesterday.
Well, Jason, we'll hope to see you on the range very soon. Let's get into the equipment. David actually has bought in some of his older guns, and Scotty's bought some as well. And I know John's got a barrel and so forth. So we'll start with David.
Yeah, I just wanted I bought this in just to show you the difference between what I started with. So this is a Ruger single 6 357 Magnum, 6.5-inch barrel with what we would call stock sights. It has about 12 clicks to the revolution. So obviously the steps of increment are very coarse. The accuracy of the sight adjustments is very crude. So this is what I started with. I think the first score I shot with it was 17 out of 40, and I was absolutely over the moon that I actually hit something and knocked it off the rail. Now, what I use today compared to earlier is a Freedom Arms. Obviously a Freedom Arms, I think just going back, my Ruger cost me $150 back in 1983. This costs nearly $4,000 to buy today. So the difference is dramatic as far as cost, but the accuracy of this gun over the last one I showed you is they're chalk and cheese, mate. And this one has a 21 click revolution on the back sight. It has sights that suit my eyes, and it's a very accurate 357 caliber revolver, the same as the previous one, but this is what I shoot today. So the difference is, over the last, 30 odd years of my shooting career has changed, and I've seen so many different things move in the right direction for shooters who are looking for accuracy. And yeah, that's what it's all about, mate. And I'll just show you this one. Obviously this is my MAB. It's in 7mm bench rest cartridge. I guess, like you said earlier, Mike, it has its place in my safe. I don't use it anymore because of the target changes and the accuracy, but I guess I've won many of competitions with this one. So yeah, it's my pride and joy, and I don't think I'd ever part with it.
I think people looking at that would think that's a bolt action rifle in a handgun.
Yes, correct.
And while we got you there, let's can you get your medal down? I want to see your World Championship medal.
Right, just hang on. Yep, so this is the medal I won in South Africa. I shot I became a world champion with a world record score in field pistol any sight with 35 out of 40. Very proud of this medal and very proud of my green jacket behind me there, Mike. So there's two things in my life that are very important to me, and that's the gold medal and my green jacket.
So career highlights for you?
Career highlights, there's hundreds of them, but yeah, to have your name and up there with the best is important to me.
Absolutely. Scotty, you've brought in some of your equipment as well. Let's run through what you've got.
Yeah, I've got some small bore pistols here. First of all, this is a production 22. We shoot this out to, we can shoot it at a 50 metre match as well as the 100 metre match. I predominantly shoot the 100 metre match. This is an old rifle, yes. It's a CZ 452 that's been converted into a 10-inch barrel. It still has the magazine. It's quite an advantage to have a magazine-fed pistol in small bore. Firstly, basically, the time between shooting gets you more time on target, and if you have a malfunction, especially with rimfire, if you have a misfire, you've got time to rectify that in between. They're very accurate. The pistol that I'm going to show you next is, it's my new gun. I haven't really shot it yet because of the new restrictions yet, but I'm sure this one here is just as accurate as the one I'm going to show you, but it has a few different advantages. Firstly, I'll point out this one, I believe, is a 13.5 sight radius, 13.5 inches that is, and what we're going to go to is a 15-inch version of this pistol here. Now, this is very similar to the MAB. It's another, this is actually a Bruno, this one, same sort of thing. This one is a 15-inch sight radius. So basically, when we're lying down in that Creedmoor position, having that little bit extra sight radius, you can notice the differences in the sight between the front post and the back post. And it is an advantage to a degree, but it's also what's comfortable for each shooter. So I've been shooting the unlimited match with that production gun. The 5th scale, I've shot pretty well. I think I've shot a 38 a couple of times, maybe a 39, I'm not sure. But so they're more than capable of doing it, even though they're a production category. I just decided to go the next step and try this one out. This one here has had the magazine removed, so it's only a single shot, so a little bit more fiddly in between shots. So I just hope the ammo works, because I probably won't have time to shoot a 6th shot if I need to. But there's plenty of these about. People try different guns and sell them, so just keep your eye out if you are interested in starting. I'd probably recommend the production gun though to start off with, and then move on to an unlimited gun like this or the MAB further on in your career.
So while we've got you on the screen there, your career highlight, what's been the biggest thrill for you so far? The World Championship?
Firstly, I think was being selected on the team for the first time. It took me, so I started Silhouette, 99, and my first team was Finland in 2011. I had a bit of a hard time over there. It was I was pretty stressed out, but that led into 2014 when we won the teams event for Big Bore. That's the first time apparently Australia's ever done that, to win the Big Bore teams event. So getting gold for Australia as a 3-person team was awesome. I also had, I came 3rd in the world individually that year as well. So that's also a big highlight for me as well.
So John, what equipment have you got to show us there?
Well, Mike, I've got a couple of guns that probably people are looking to get into the match, which suggest probably they start with a rimfire. And because of the way the category structure is set up, a revolver you can shoot in all four categories. As long as it's shot in its own category first, you then go on and shoot production, standing, and unlimited with the same gun. Not like Scott had the production and the unlimited bolt action guns. You can shoot the production gun in the unlimited category, but you can't shoot the unlimited gun in the lower category. So to start off with a revolver, I've got here what is a Ruger single 6. It's the small baby brother of the one that David had there earlier. This is in 22 long rifle. And once again, it's got aftermarket sights, front and rear, because the standard sights are pretty basic and pretty ordinary. It's also got an aftermarket grip on it that suits my hand a bit better than the standard grip. But that would be a good starting point for somebody who wanted to get into this metallic silhouette, particularly in the rimfire category. And you progress up from there once you get used to shooting with the revolver, and you always keep the revolver for your revolver match later. Progress on to other guns like Scott's bolt action one there. I've got another one here which is pretty familiar to a lot of people, the Thompson Center Contender. And now these are a very good start-up gun too, I suppose, insofar as you can buy barrels, different barrels, put on the same frame and change the caliber. This one is in 357. I've got another barrel here, which is in 22 Hornet for a field pistol event. And you can see that little hole in there. There's a pivot pin that goes through the stock about here. Underneath, you take the fore end off, tap the pin out, the barrel comes up, you put another barrel on, put the pin in, put the fore end back on, and then you're right to go for completely different category or different caliber. And that's the latest model, what they call the G2. Most people are shooting the earlier model at the moment. There's a few G2s that started to come online, but they're readily available. The barrel's all interchanged with the old and the new model. That's the only part that does. Once again, this one's been fitted with aftermarket sights, front sight and a rear sight, just to give you a better, I suppose, sight picture and more accurate adjustments than the standard sight that comes on the gun from the factory.
Okay, so John, give us your career highlight. I've got a couple of questions which are relating to what we just said. I know someone just asking there, can you hold the gun a bit further back? So yeah. A little bit blurry, but yeah, there you go. You can hold it a little bit further back.
That's the Ruger, the single 6 22 revolver. And that's the Thompson Center Contender. And as I say, that one's in 357. It's a good one to start with too for people. The loading components are readily available just about anywhere, and it's pretty competitive in the three matches. Not so much in unlimited these days, but for load it's a simple matter of pushing back on the trigger guard, and the barrel drops down. You put a cartridge in there, close it up, cock the hammer, and you're right to go. Now I've also thought I had one here. I don't know what I've done with it. That's probably a bit familiar to some of the our ISSF shooters. Oh, yeah, here it is.
I know when we spoke earlier in the week, you guys were saying that if you had to get into it, because of the question here from David Ingram, what are your recommendations for people starting out? Is it better to borrow a specific silhouette pistol or just have a go with an ISSF pistol? And I think we were saying the 50 metre pistol in ISSF is an entry-level pistol. You could get into the sport in that, using that.
You certainly could. And as I say, ISSF, if you wanted to try to put that target out and see if you can keep them all in the 10 ring or the X ring. But this one is an older pistol that was used in the 50 metre pistol or free pistol in its day. It's a Hammerly 120. They weren't necessarily the best ergonomic pistol to shoot in the 50 metre match, but they are certainly very, very accurate. They have an excellent trigger in them, and they're really suited to rimfire silhouette. One of our top team members has 3 of them set up in 3 different configurations for rimfire production, standing and unlimited categories, and he shoots them very well. So if there's any of these laying around in your safes, in the back of safes, and I'm sure there are out there somewhere, give me a call if you don't want it.
You're happy to take it off people's hands, are you?
Probably could. I thought everybody else will say the same thing. I can see David laughing.
There you go. So give us your career highlight.
Probably the selection in the Australian team 2013 would have been that. I spent a lot of time in the background, I suppose, up until that point, with team support and that sort of thing. But when I was selected to go to Sweden for the World Cup, and I was quietly confident, but I wasn't sort of bubbling over, so to speak, because you looked at the history, and everyone's first trip overseas usually wasn't their best performance. So I was a little bit, I suppose, wary of that with that background. But when I got over there, they taught me to shooting a rimfire. I went over to the big ball matches, and they taught me to shooting a rimfire match as a bit of an eye opener. So Ian Ewell kindly lent me his Hammerley, which I'm familiar with, and they scrounged around and found me enough leftover ammunition to shoot a match. And I laid down and I shot a 40 first up, and that really set the tone for me. That increased, brought my confidence levels up. I came out, I got shot 35 in unlimited, and when I came out, someone said, "Oh, how'd you go?" "Oh, 35." That was, he said that probably won't win, but it's a pretty good basic team score, and we were there for the team score altogether. Turned out the other two team members both shot 35 as well, so I was pretty happy with that. 39 in revolver, which I missed a chicken, which is not the, forgiving, all that sort of forgiving, an idea when you miss the close targets and then you get all the rest. But and a 40 in production, when that put me into the shoot-offs, and after a couple of rounds, I think it was, I came out with the gold medal in the individual production class at the World Cup. So that would be my top team thing, top highlight.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I've heard you guys mention on the range, you clean the rail. That's when you've knocked down all targets. That's
correct, yeah. And when you do that in the shoot-offs, that's when it really feels good.
Yeah, if you're in an individual shoot-off with one or two other people and you knock down 5, chances are you're going to take the higher place. It's unusual for 2 people to knock down 5 in a row.
It can be, but not always. I've seen a few shoot-offs where there'd be 2 or 3 lots of 5 go down, and you go on for another one, and maybe 3 or 4 rounds before someone actually, gets the advantage and gets maybe 4 or 5 again, and the other people involved don't do quite as well. And I think that's a little bit of eye fatigue and also mental abilities there too. You have to convince yourself you can do it time and time again.
Yeah, well, we've enjoyed, myself and Fuzzy Media, filming, and when you have the shoot-offs, we treat it like a final, and we've done a bit of commentary over the top of people shooting and calling, Scott got 4 down and the other shooters got 3 down, and it's a lot of fun, and it just adds to that bit of drama to the match, and it's close to the final as you're going to get out of Metallic Silhouette, I guess.
Yeah, and it can be a little bit difficult too, because you're probably not far from the guy you're shooting against, and in the background you can hear his spotter calling his shots. I know you're not supposed to be listening, but everybody does. You can't. It's just human nature. You can't try to help it. You know where your competitors are and how many they've got down half the time before and that's another thing you've got to sort of work against.
Yeah, you don't want to hear the other spotter calling, "Oh, dead centre, dead centre, dead centre."
No, they do that sometimes just to psych you out too, I'm sure.
Yeah, if you're in the zone, you're in the zone. You shouldn't be worried about what's going on around you. I mean, I guess from what I've learnt and seen in like you said, Mike, with the finals in ISSF now, it's open slather, mate. They can make as much noise as they want to put the shooters out, put the shooters off.
Oh, they play music. They got commentary.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I get in trouble if I blasted out the speakers at Metallic Silhouette shoot-off. People might get upset with me.
Yeah, no, we got nothing to complain about from what I've seen, I can tell you.
Everyone's very friendly and polite, and they help each other out. Is there any sledging on the line?
Oh yeah, there is a bit of sledging, and it's I guess for a word, it's friendly sledging, but it's more trying to especially with the top level shooters, there's a few people out there that always tend to try and throw a spanner in the works, so to speak. But like I said, if you're in the zone and there's a few people out there that get in the zone, mate, and a bomb could go off and it wouldn't affect them.
Yeah, you're almost like in a tunnel, and everything you see is the target. The targets obviously look bigger. You've got seem like more time to get your sight picture in, because it is over a time limit as well. You haven't got unlimited time to knock down the targets. You've got to shoot within a certain time frame.
Yeah, it's basically the same as the match. You've got 2 minutes to shoot 5 shots, and and they're going to be shot in the correct order as well, so left to right. But it's like at the end of the competition, that's where you will get your winner. So everybody's focusing on winning, and it's like John said, sometimes you'll go 5 after 5 after 5. Very rarely does that happen, but it does happen, and that's when you get the true winner at the end of the competition.
Well, guys, let's talk about, we have spoken about ISSF shooters, and you guys have all shot ISSF and come across. But I was impressed with Linda Jekyll up in Narrabri, the big bore. She'd been in the WA 1500 World Championship in the Australian team, and she came up to Narrabri, and she actually did really, really well.
Well, I was pretty excited to see Linda's name on the entry list when we shot at, I think the first time Linda came was to Goolawah in the small bore. But at the end of the day, Linda's experience is very high, and I can guarantee that she obviously learned her ability with a little bit of ISSF background as well. So, you know, with Linda's approach to what she does in WA 1500 and the other matches, it's just a follow on. And with metallic silhouette, I think the hardest thing for Linda was in Goolawah was to get into those crazy positions we get into.
Yeah, well, the Creedmoor is the position of choice. And so you're lying on your back, your legs are, or your feet are flat on the floor, your knees are coming together almost like a tripod, and then you're resting the gun on the side of your leg for stability. And that, as you said, that seems to be the most accurate way to shoot. But it looks a little uncomfortable because your other arm is up behind your head, holding your head up so you can look down the range. It doesn't look natural. It doesn't look that comfortable. Well,
I'll answer. I'll give an opinion there, and then I'd like to hear what the other two guys have got to say. But it is the most accurate position to put yourself into. But what we've got to understand is that we are all different. We all have short, long torsos. We have issues with our necks, our backs, and stuff like that. But you've just got to accommodate the best position that you can. And from a coach's perspective, and what I do when I'm watching people shoot is I make mental notes, and then I go back to them afterwards and correct their positions by talking to them and say, look, if you try this, it might work for you better than what you're actually doing on the range today. So it is the best position, but you've just got to be able to accommodate that position by training. It's like anything.
So, Scotty, Creedmoor, it's okay for you? You get down pretty easily?
Originally, no. It took me a lot to get it right. I'd have my knees apart when I'm shooting. I'd have my elbow off the ground. I think to me, I just think of the triangle. So you got your legs in a triangle, you got the butt of the pistol and your elbow out to the side on the ground as a triangle. You got a triangle behind your head. Sometimes, well, I guess the triangle is a very stable shape, and sometimes I'll just lie in front of the TV and just be in that position, and it's pretty comfortable for me now. But that's after shooting for 20 years. But it just takes a little bit to get it right. Feel free to ask any of the shooters. They'll be happy to point out a few different things and how to get into the position. If you can't, there are other positions that you can do too. So it's not a necessity to shoot that. Some of our really good female shooters, but they shoot in a position called dead frog. It's very similar, but however, they've got their legs crossed and they've got the pistol on the top of their leg. I can't do that. I don't have the hip flexibility, but that works for them because some of the pistols are very heavy. You can shoot.
Yeah, I've seen Carmel, who knits those fabulous beanies. Carmel shoots like that, the dead frog. So her knees are spread apart, and she's resting the gun almost on the top of a knee, or on the side of a knee.
If I try that, I'm about a 90-degree angle with my legs. So yeah, it wouldn't work.
Men aren't built that flexibly. John, getting down to the Creedmoor, obviously it's great as you get older to keep that flexibility and keep your body moving.
Yes, Mike. I was like David. I started my first few matches I shot prone position because I had a relatively short barrel revolver. But once I moved up in the equipment levels, I started to shoot in the Creedmoor and found it very, I suppose it was just different to start with. It wasn't hard to get into that position. I'm still reasonably flexible. But we did have an exercise once at the AIS in Canberra where they put us on a force platform, and that measures sort of body movements and tremors and things like that. And the Creedmoor position came out way, way on top as far as a stable platform to shoot from. Not more so than an accurate one, but very stable platform. And there's an excellent article, I think, on the PA website written by Richard Bladen explaining the Creedmoor position, and he's got a whole bunch of diagrams of the triangles that Scott was talking about earlier. And if anyone's interested, it'd be well worth their while to read that article.
So they can get onto pistol.org.au on the Pistol Australia website there and have a look. The new website's up. We're going to ask if anyone's got any more questions. We've been going a little over an hour now, and it's been fascinating stuff from three of our experts in metallic silhouette. So remember, down the bottom of your screen, that Q&A button, just click on that and we'll get to your questions as they come along. What I do want to do, though, at the moment is just come back up. Oh, onto the wrong place there. Just want to get my there, and that's it. Just want to thank all our state and territory associations for supporting us here on our webinar. Obviously, these are things we're discussing week in, week out about webinars and how we can keep engaging members of the pistol community during the lockout. So just encourage anybody who has an idea about a webinar to email pawebinar@pistol.org.au, and I'll put that just up on the screen now if you can have a look at that. Oh, sorry, I'll get the right one up. There we go. pawebinar@pistol.org.au. If you want to suggest a topic here for the PA webinars, and we'll discuss those every Wednesday. We have a panel that meets on Wednesdays, and we discuss what we're going to do for the coming week. And we're so glad we got metallic silhouette up. We've got a couple of questions. So another one from Ben. Guys, should there be more training introductory camps in the sport? David, do you want to take that one first as a coach?
Yeah, I agree. There should be a lot more coaching type seminars for the top shooters, but the top shooters are very, from my experience is that everybody has already made their platform in the way they shoot and stuff like that. Where you actually pick up the issues that are relating to better performances on the line as a coach, watching the competitors and then talking to them offline so they understand where they've gone wrong, what they can actually do to improve their thing. But I do agree, and Ben's question is quite valid, is that we should get more involved with running more high-level coaching seminars for our metallic silhouette teams going overseas.
Well, perhaps using this Zoom webinar type situation is an opportunity for that, because you can get everyone together. They're spread across the country. We're such a big country. You can get people together remotely on a webinar like this and talk about stuff, and then come together at competitions as they pop up throughout the calendar.
Oh, definitely. And I think my coaching is very important to me as far as getting new shooters, giving them the right advice, and so they don't make mistakes like we did in the early days. So that's the critical thing that I do. And if people want to get involved with Zoom and doing that, that's a great thing, I think, because people like John has a wealth of knowledge with different firearms over the years, and you know, we just need to make sure that our shooters are getting the access to people like me and others out there who have, it's like John said with Richard Bladen. Richard used to be an Australian team member who retired from the sport as a international competitor, but still shoots and is very knowledgeable in actually what he's got to offer people in the sport of metallic silhouette.
Now, Scott, you put in your bio, you obviously were selected in the Australian team to go away, and the World Championships were going to be in Sweden in July this year. Now, they've been cancelled due to COVID-19, and Maritz Isaacson from Sweden is just asking, will Australia aim to host the World Championship? So disappointment, you're in the Australian team, you're not going to get to go. Would you love to have one at home on Australian soil?
Yeah, so we did originally have one in year 2000 here. We held it at Belmont range. I wasn't, my uncle didn't want to pay the €45 fee to enter me under 10s, so I didn't get to go along to that one. Absolutely, I'd love to have it here. Whether we do is beyond me. It's not my call also, so we'd have to really go through PA and all the different state bodies to see if we can do that. Dave might have a bit more information on that.
Well, David, obviously, as Vice President of IMSU, and with Rob Boucher as the President and the whole committee there at the International Metallic Silhouette Shooters Union, you guys will be discussing that. Not much choice there but to cancel the World Championships in Sweden this year. Chance of that being rescheduled later, or just held over and then it'll go to a new location in 2 years' time?
Yeah, from what I'm hearing, Mike, is that it's going to be held over, and I think Sweden will get the opportunity to World Championships in a couple of years' time. But it's, I guess, getting back to the hosting of the World Championships, we hosted it in 2000, and from the reports back from the competitors, international competitors, it was the most successful, most well-run World Championships that they had been to at that time. Now, from the perspective of hosting it in the future, you know, there are political answers that we need, questions that need to be asked, because, as you know, the World Championships is not just handguns, it's long arms as well, and there are international competitors that only shoot long arms, so there's a whole lot of answers that need to be gotten to before we can host the World Championships in Australia.
Well, here's a question from Kay. Have you guys had any issues travelling with firearms to different competitions around Australia and internationally? John, you want to jump in on that one?
Not really, providing you've got all your paperwork in order, and that comes down, if internationally the team manager has a big input into that. But travelling domestically, we've never really had an issue. You have your guns in suitable cases locked up, ammunition in a separate bag, once again locked up. Most of the airlines, they all have a policy on how to transport firearms, and some of them even have a little letter that you get signed before you fly, and you present that letter at check-in, and no issues. But a couple of people I know of have had some issues, particularly one particular guy I know, we're flying back from the United States a couple of years ago, and his flight got cancelled. The initial flight got cancelled, which was due to land in Melbourne, I think, and he got transferred to a flight that landed in Brisbane. He landed in Brisbane with some unfired ammunition, and it all got confiscated because he didn't have a permit to import explosives, which is solely a Queensland issue thing. You don't need it in Victoria or New South Wales. So there's little issues like that can come up at times. He ended up getting it all back, of course, a bit of paperwork and some toing and froing with customs. But yeah, if you've got all your paperwork in order, your guns are stored as they should be, never really had an issue as such.
There we go. Here's a question also from John. With ranges being so far apart, you guys do a lot of travelling. Obviously, a lot of time in the car, get in there with one of your friends and listen to the radio, have a good chat on the way to the range?
Yeah, we do quite a bit of travelling. I mean, I think the first year, not long after Judy and I got married, we did 35,000 kilometres in 12 months, travelling to and from shoots, much less anything else. But you know, like it's 1,200 kilometres from Narrabri to Canberra, which is quite a long drive down, long drive back. Narrabri is about 700 k's. I think Inverell's 600. Goolaw's our close one. Of course, it's only 120, 130 k's. We do have a range in Brisbane, a 100-metre range at Metro, which was the club I belong to here. We shoot there a reasonable amount. We shoot competitions twice a month. So that's an easy one. It's a bit like David going to Narrabri. It's not so bad for him. But yeah, the ranges are few and far between, and that's somewhat of a historical thing. In the days, in the early 80s when Silhouette first kicked off, the only clubs that had the land to develop Silhouette range were the country clubs, and they didn't have the money. The city clubs had a lot of money, but didn't have any land to develop. So it was just a few ranges around the country that kicked off and developed slowly, not in big leaps and bounds by any means, but and support from the Silhouette shooters who lived in the cities, who wanted to shoot the match, but they were quite willing to travel to the country to do it. So there was Narrabri, I think was the first one. It kicked off, I think it was licensed in 1981, if memory serves. And it was the first licensed Silhouette range in New South Wales. Inverell or Delungra came online not long after that. Then there was one at Cowra or out at Merriganowrie. I think there's one down at Hume. I'm not sure. I've never been to that one. I know they used to shoot there. There's one in Toogoolawah.
Clearly, real estate, or having enough real estate to build the range, is the first criteria, and in a city, that's going to be a very difficult thing.
Oh, it's basically impossible. Although Brisbane, we're a little bit lucky. We've got quite a good shooting complex at Belmont, and there is a 200-metre range there. It belongs to another organisation, not ours, but we still get to shoot on it occasionally if we want to. But as far as Sydney's concerned, they used to shoot on the Malabar Rifle Range, but I don't think that's happened for quite some time, and probably not likely to happen in the foreseeable future either. And other clubs, Newcastle, they shoot a lot of 50-metre match stuff. They are in a quarry basically in the middle of the city, so they're very restricted as far as their expansion goes. They did have a range out in the country at one point in time, but it was agreed a rifle range, but it got closed down. They've looked at various times for other sites, but a little bit unsuccessfully. There's a few range clubs in that Hunter area, I think, that have probably got 100-metre facilities, I believe. I haven't actually seen any of them in person, but we're hoping that they'll keep working on them and come online.
That'd be fantastic. One for Scott. What's your mental preparation for competitional training? What do you do? Do you have specific exercises? Have you ever had a sight coach? Is it just something you've worked on naturally?
It does come a little bit natural to me. Having a small family these days takes up a lot of my time, or most of it. Yeah. There's one in the background having a bit of a yell anyway. Yes, darling. All right.
Yes, Dad. Dad, what are you doing?
Yeah, I guess going into a match, I think preparation is the right thing to do. Even preparing your sights before you get to the line, having all your gear in your box before you get to the line is nothing worse than the load command comes down and you don't have a screwdriver or something like that. So doing that check before, it's a perfect preparation. As for training, when I can get up to the range in Toogoolawah, it's mostly for working bees. I do a little bit of standing practice, mainly to get the sights just on the back of my front door, just sit there and just dry fire, especially before I go away for an international competition or the nationals. I really try to focus on those. This year, getting the national championship was, I guess, lucky for me in my thing, because I hadn't been able to shoot due to work and family commitments. So I hadn't shot in 3 or 4 months, so I was just very lucky.
I'd like, if I could, Mike, please, I just want to just add to what Scott's saying there about his mental preparation. Many years ago when I first started, it was very important to me to set myself goals that I had to achieve on the way to becoming a national champion, then a world champion. But one of the highlights of my shooting career was he is now passed now, is a coach, Tibor Gonzal. And I spent a bit of time with this coach, and Tibor and I spoke, not at quite lengths, but we spoke a fair bit about mental training and stuff. And the thing that he instilled in my brain was a word called visualization. And I had to ask him to explain that. But what it meant to me was that I actually ran the competition through my mind subconsciously before I actually went to the championship. And, you know, things like Scott just said, you know, side adjustments and stuff like that, I actually did that in my mind on the carpet before I even went to the competition. So that is still how I mentally prepare myself for competitions, major competitions, is I actually visualize laying on the carpet, loading the gun, firing the shot, squeezing the trigger, the sight follow through, and all that sort of stuff that we know we have to do, but I actually do it mentally before the competition. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that from a coach's perspective, there's a lot of mental tricks that we can do. I guess tricks is not the right word, but we approaching the major competitions is where it's very important that you are mentally prepared, physically prepared, and your equipment is prepared. So at the end of the day, when no stone is unturned, mate, you just got to be prepared to the best you can.
Well, that flows into a great question from Joe Kapitanoff. He wants to ask you, David, do you see there's room there to develop a program for coaches and athletes so the correct information is being used and shared?
I think any coaching direction we take with our athletes is a great thing. But I've always said that I think there's a couple of different tiers that we need to be looking at. And I think that the tier that are under the elite international representatives now are the ones that I tend to spend more time addressing, because they're the future. And they're the ones that aren't really, they haven't got to where I've been. And I can say is that my goal is to get those people to that level.
Well, probably that grassroots development can be the most important, to give them the good grounding, the good technique, the good preparation, the setup for the match, so they can progress through the grades and then make their way to the elite level.
Oh, definitely. And I think that it's not only me, it's other coaches. But it's very important that the other coaches have an understanding of what we are actually doing in metallic silhouette. And like when you're shooting a 308 handgun and they talk about sight follow through, the mental approach to sight follow through is there, but obviously the sights have gone in recoil, you know, so there's a whole lot of things that people need to be taught and shown, and they have to put those things into practice. You know, if they want to get where Scotty's got, where John's got, and where I've got, and a few others, that's the work that they have to put in the future.
Well, we've got a question here from one of our attendees. What if you can't visualize? I've tried, but I can't seem to do it. So there's a specific question around trying to get into that mental space and be ready, as you've just said, visualize before you get to the range.
Well, from my experience, it is very important to be able to visualize, because you've actually got to go through the process in your mind. But if you haven't got the ability to be able to do that, then I guess like there's no better ability to be able to do dry fire on the range. And like my son was only telling me just the other day that he actually shoots air pistol, but with reduced size targets. And I'm thinking, wow, that's a great way of being able to practice in areas where you don't have live targets. You know, it's yeah. So there's other ways of being able to actually not use the word visualize, but to do a dry fire routine to be able to then get into that muscle memory, your mental approach to the match through different ways.
I'd suggest that a person who's having trouble visualising maybe get on the Pistol Australia website and have a look at all the great footage that Fuzzy's put up at the Big Bore and Small Bore Nationals and just watch the videos. A lot of
yeah, definitely.
Doing some great stuff.
Definitely. Yeah, and then ring me when you find that you're doing something wrong.
Okay, Scotty, I think probably the last question we may have here is, do you have a warm-up routine before a match, and can you share some thoughts?
No, I don't have a specific warm-up routine. It's usually I'm camping on the range and have some brekkie and get into it, or help out putting mats out, especially for the start of the day. If some people do some stretches, it's personal preference. I don't find it being it's not a very physical sport until you go out and pick up some rams at 200 metres, and sometimes we use two people to do that. So it's all about being helpful, and yeah, so I don't specifically do anything for physical. It's just, yeah, doing that preparation things with your gear and all those little things that can get your mind actually on what you need to do.
Yeah, I actually quite enjoyed Narrabri getting on the back of the truck there, going out to 200 metres and helping set up the targets. That was it's a nice part of the day. Another one here from someone, and maybe John can take this one. I get very nervous before a match. How can I overcome this?
Good question. I can remember in the days when some people were that nervous they'd be out the back of the line almost throwing up. But it's a well, I suppose it's a mental thing too. But the more you do it, the more accustomed your body becomes to getting into the position and your mindset. So I can only say that practice. I mean, if you don't go to the match to win every time, particularly if you're shooting against top international level competitors, you're shooting against yourself. And if you can shoot a better score than you shot last time, you're a winner. And just keep that in mind. You're not there to level the world, but just beat yourself from what you shot last time. And if you don't, come back and have another go at it. It's something. It's a personal thing, I suppose. The nerves get to everyone in different ways in all sorts of different situations. If you get to the point where you get there and you can't hold the gun steady, if the nerves are that bad, then it's a problem I really don't know the answer to. But as far as
keep working hard, and keep
practice.
perfecting the craft.
Dry fire and practice at home, lie on the floor in front of the television, make sure the gun's unloaded, because TVs are really expensive these days. But and run through a match, like Dave said, almost in your mind. Visualise it. Open the gun up, put an imaginary bullet in it, pick up your sight picture. You can have a dot on the wall or a little tiny animal painted on the wall or target stuck up somewhere, and do that 5 times. Stop, have a rest, and while the targets are being reset, do it again 5 times. And it's a matter of becoming familiar with what you're doing, I think. And then when you transfer that to an actual competition, it becomes a bit easier.
Yeah, I think I'd like to add to that.
Yeah.
Look, I guess from a personal point of view, to answer the guy's question about nerves, before I took on pistol shooting, I was a pretty handy swimmer, but I can tell you the nerves that I had when I took the blocks were to the point where, like John said, I spent a fair bit of time leaning over the back fence, dry reaching and stuff like that because of my nerves. And that did not change when I started shooting pistol, because it come down to the goals that I set and the level of competitiveness that I was carrying. I didn't want to fail. So the nerves actually became part of my routine. And, I guess I can say, and I've told a lot of people, the day I lost my nerves, was probably the edge of my ability dropped off slightly. The nerves actually were there that actually gave me the adrenaline rush to produce the scores that I was shooting in the earlier days.
Fantastic.
I think also focusing on the outcome is not the right way to go. I try to focus on the process. So even if I'm shooting production for, say, it's a relatively easy match for me, easier. I'm still focused on each process, each shot. I try to get the perfect shot each time. I'm not worried about the 40th shot when I'm shooting the 40th target. I'm worried about how to execute that shot when I'm doing it. And then when the match is over, then you can focus on the outcome. That's really big in standing, I think. A lot of people know their score whilst they're shooting standing, and it's coming up towards their personal best. And then you'll see the nerves creep in. When you know what score you are on standing and you're coming up to that personal best, that's when the nerves are going to creep in, and they're going to cause you issues, and then you're not going to be executing that shot that you need to. So each time, just focus on the outcome of that single shot. Don't focus on the outcome of the whole match until it's over, because how you shoot that matches to how the outcome's going to be, either a good or bad. So if you have every shot that's mostly on target, you're going to get a good outcome.
Yeah.
Well, there's a comment here from one of our attendees. There is no easy 40 when you're nervous, and I guess there's no easy 40 whether you're nervous or not.
No, absolutely not. My first one was a shocker. I don't know how I hit the target, to tell you the truth, the number 40, but that was because I was focused on the outcome. But since then, I've shot it a few times, and now I get nervous in the shoot-off. So it's just changed where you get nervous, especially on the world stage. When you're up against up to 20 40s in big ball production, you have to do 4 or 5 to even get a look into getting in the top 5 or 6. So you got to get those shots right.
Yeah, and just to support Scott in what he just said there, it's executing every shot the same thing through the whole 40 shots. But I guess it comes down to the individual, Mike. When it comes to nerves and stuff like that, I see people walk up to the whaling wall very often during a competition, and you know what? There are people that can handle knowing what other people have shot, and then there's people that go to there and then they think, holy hell, trouble's starting right now, because they've actually done the fundamental error of looking at the scoreboard to find out what other people are shooting instead of worrying about their own process.
Well, one of our attendees here, obviously a metallic silhouette shooter. I took the bucket to the line with me for my first 40.
Well,
talking about throwing up and being nervous, take it with you. It's going to make it tough.
It's funny that person is obviously a metallic silhouette shooter, but I can recall another Narrabri, a top class shooter, and we would be called to the range at similar times, and we'd look around behind the shed, and we'd both be there bent over at the knees. So look, it's just it happens. You've just got to deal with it.
Okay, guys, I'm just going to put this up for everyone to have a look at. Just if you can email pawebinar@pistol.org.au if you've got any questions coming out of today's webinar or any topics that you'd like to see us in the future. That email again, pawebinar@pistol.org.au. And again, we want to thank all the state and territory bodies for supporting us here in these times of lockup and trying to engage our members. I want to thank, firstly, David Dewsbury, Scotty Dawson, and John Harding for being part of the panel today. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
Great to be here.
My pleasure, Mike.
Well, we're going to wrap it up there, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being with us. We'll be back again next Saturday at 3 p.m. with a new topic. We'll be discussing that on Wednesday during the week, and we'll come up and let you know as soon as possible. Thanks for being with us, and bye for now. See you guys.
Thank you. See you, Mike.
Bye.